Story 1. The Host Who Wasn't Human. My name is Rachel Mendez, and I'm a travel nurse. I've been doing this for 6 years now, bouncing from hospital to hospital, city to city, never staying anywhere longer than 13 weeks. It's a lonely life, honestly. No time to make real friends. No relationship that lasts beyond a few dates before I have to pack up and leave again. But it pays well, and I tell myself I'm doing important work. That's why I use Airbnb instead of hotels. At least in someone's home, there's the illusion of normalcy, of belonging somewhere, even if it's temporary. I found the listing on October 3rd. I was starting a new contract in Asheville, North Carolina, and needed a place for 3 months. The listing was perfect, a small cottage on the outskirts of town, surrounded by woods, private and quiet. The photos showed hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, a clawfoot tub. Cozy? Charming? The reviews were glowing, dozens of 5-star ratings praising the host's hospitality and the peaceful atmosphere. The host's name was Eleanor Grimshaw. Her profile photo showed a woman in her 60s, silver hair pulled back in a bun, kind eyes, warm smile. Her bio said she'd lived in Asheville all her life and loved sharing her home with travelers. I booked it immediately. The drive to the cottage took me down increasingly narrow roads, away from the town's artsy downtown and tourist areas, deep into the Blue Ridge Mountains. The GPS lost signal twice, and I had to navigate by the directions Eleanor had sent. Turn left at the old oak with the tire swing, continue 2 miles until you see the stone mailbox. The sun was setting when I arrived, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The cottage sat at the end of a gravel driveway, exactly as pictured. Smoke curled from the chimney. Warm light glowed in the windows. I parked and grabbed my bags from the trunk. The air smelled like wood smoke and pine needles, cool and crisp with the coming autumn night. Leaves crunched under my feet as I walked to the front door. Before I could knock, the door opened. Eleanor stood there, exactly like her photo. Same silver hair, same warm smile. She wore a cardigan and a floral dress that looked handmade, and she smelled faintly of lavender and something else I couldn't identify. Something earthy like mushrooms or wet soil. "Rachel, welcome, dear. Come in, come in. You must be exhausted from your drive." Her voice was warm, grandmotherly. It made something in my chest relax. That constant tension I carry from always being in unfamiliar places. "Thank you so much for having me," I said, stepping inside. The interior was even lovelier than the photos. Everything was exactly where it should be. Worn leather armchair by the fireplace, quilts draped over the back of the couch, bookshelves lined with old hardcovers. It felt like stepping into my grandmother's house, if I'd had a grandmother who loved me. Eleanor showed me around, her movements slow and deliberate. "The bedroom is upstairs, bathroom just down the hall. Kitchen is fully stocked. Help yourself to anything. I live in the main house just through the woods, so if you need anything, just call." She handed me a business card with her phone number written in careful cursive. "This is perfect," I said. "Really?" "Thank you." She patted my hand. Her fingers were cold, I noticed. Very cold, despite the warmth of the house. "You just make yourself at home, dear. This place has been in my family for generations. It's seen a lot of travelers over the years. It knows how to take care of people." Strange way to phrase it, but I was too tired to think about it. I thanked her again, and she left through the back door, disappearing into the darkening woods with surprising speed for someone her age. That first night, I slept deeply. The kind of sleep I hadn't experienced in years. No sounds from neighbors, no traffic, just the gentle crackle of the dying fire and the wind through the trees outside. If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every place you stay. I woke up feeling more rested than I had in months. The sun streamed through the lace curtains. Birds sang outside. I made coffee in the old percolator on the stove and sat by the window watching the mist rise from the forest floor. Everything was perfect for the first 3 days. On the fourth night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. I know because I checked my phone, squinting at the bright screen in the darkness. Something had woken me, but I didn't know what. I lay there listening. Footsteps. Downstairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps crossing the wooden floor. My heart started pounding. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, and crept to the bedroom door. Opened it a crack and peered down the stairs. The living room was dark except for the dying embers in the fireplace. And there, silhouetted against the faint red glow, was a figure. Eleanor. She stood perfectly still in the center of the room, her back to the stairs. She wasn't moving, just standing there in the darkness, arms at her sides. "Eleanor?" I called out softly. "Is everything okay?" She didn't respond, didn't turn around, didn't even acknowledge that I'd spoken. I watched her for what felt like several minutes. She never moved, never shifted her weight. It was like she was frozen, a statue in the middle of the room. Finally, I said louder, "Eleanor, you're scaring me." That's when she turned around. But her movements were wrong. She didn't pivot like a normal person. She rotated, her body staying perfectly rigid, like she was on a turntable. And when she faced me, I couldn't see her features. The darkness where her face should have been was absolute, deeper than the shadows around her. "Just checking on you, dear," she said, and her voice was exactly the same as before. Warm, grandmotherly. But it didn't match the thing standing in my living room. Then she walked toward the back door. But she didn't walk. She glided. Her feet didn't move. She just slid across the floor, opened the door without touching it, and disappeared into the night. I stood at the top of the stairs, shaking for a long time. Eventually, I convinced myself I'd been dreaming. Sleep paralysis, maybe. I'd been stressed at work, not sleeping well before I arrived. My mind was playing tricks. I went back to bed, but didn't sleep. The next morning, everything looked normal again. Bright sunshine, birds singing, the smell of coffee. I almost convinced myself it had been a dream, until I went downstairs and saw the muddy footprints. They led from the back door to the center of the living room, where Eleanor had been standing, and then back to the door. But they weren't normal footprints. They were too large, the toe prints too long, almost claw-like, and they didn't quite match the pattern of human feet. I took photos, messaged my best friend Sarah back in Phoenix. "Weird night. Think my Airbnb host is creeping around at night. Should I leave?" She responded immediately. "Yes, get out of there. That's creepy as hell." But I had nowhere else to go. It was peak leaf peeping season in Asheville. Every hotel, every other Airbnb was booked solid. And I'd already paid for 3 months up front, non-refundable. I decided to talk to Eleanor, set some boundaries, make it clear she couldn't just come into the cottage at night. I called the number on her business card. It rang and rang and rang. No voicemail, just endless ringing. I decided to walk to the main house. She'd said it was just through the woods. I followed a path that seemed to lead in the right direction, marked by small stones painted white. The forest was dense here, the canopy thick enough to block most of the sunlight. It smelled like decay and mushrooms. Everything was too quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. After 20 minutes of walking, I found the house, or what was left of it. It was a ruin. The roof had collapsed decades ago. The walls were crumbling, covered in ivy and moss. The windows were empty sockets, glass long gone. The front door hung at an angle on one rusted hinge. This couldn't be right. Eleanor had said she lived here, had left through the woods to come here every night. I approached carefully, pulling out my phone to use as a flashlight. "Eleanor, are you here?" No answer. I stepped through the doorway into what had once been a living room. Everything was rotted and ruined. Furniture collapsed into moldy heaps. wallpaper peeling in long strips. And there, on the mantel above a fireplace identical to the one in the cottage, was a photograph in a tarnished frame. I picked it up, wiping away decades of dust. It showed a woman who looked exactly like Eleanor. Same silver hair, same dress, same warm smile. But the photo was old, really old. The kind of black and white photo from the early 1900s, and written on the back in faded ink. Eleanor Grimshaw, 1924, 1987. She'd been dead for over 30 years. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the frame. I backed out of the ruined house and ran back down that trail, branches whipping my face, my breath coming in gasps, until I burst out of the forest near the cottage where warm smoke still curled from the chimney, where everything looked cozy and inviting and completely normal. I packed my bags in 10 minutes, threw everything into my car, didn't even bother to fold my clothes. I was loading the last bag when I heard her voice behind me. "Leaving so soon, dear?" I spun around. Eleanor stood at the edge of the woods, hands clasped in front of her, that same warm smile on her face. "You're not real," I said, my voice shaking. "You're dead. You've been dead since 1987. Her smile didn't waver. Dead is such a harsh word. I prefer to think of it as dedicated. I've been taking care of this cottage for so long, I suppose I forgot to stop. What are you? I'm exactly what you needed, Rachel. A place that feels like home. A place where someone cares if you're warm and safe and rested. You lonely people, you travelers, you need that so badly." She tilted her head. "I provide it. Is that so wrong? You're not human?" "Not anymore, but I was once, and I remember what it felt like to be lonely, to want to belong somewhere." She took a step closer, and I saw that her feet didn't quite touch the ground. "Stay, Rachel. Let me take care of you. You'll never feel alone again." I got in my car and locked the doors, started the engine with shaking hands. Eleanor stood there watching as I reversed down the driveway. She didn't follow, just raised one hand in a gentle wave, like a grandmother seeing off a beloved grandchild. I drove straight to a 24-hour diner 20 miles away and sat in the fluorescent lights until sunrise, drinking coffee and shaking. When I checked my Airbnb app, the listing was gone, completely vanished, along with all those 5-star reviews. I searched for Eleanor Grimshaw in Asheville, found her obituary from 1987. She'd died alone in her family's cottage in the woods, wasn't found for 3 weeks. The obituary mentioned she'd always dreamed of opening a bed and breakfast, of taking care of travelers, but never had the chance. I guess death didn't stop her from pursuing that dream. I found a hotel room, paid triple the normal rate for the last available room in the city, and I never used Airbnb again. Because now I know, sometimes the hosts who seem too good to be true, who provide exactly what you need, who make you feel like you finally belong somewhere, aren't providing hospitality at all. They're keeping you. So if you ever book a place and the host seems too perfect, too attentive, too eager to make you feel at home, check to make sure they're still alive. Because some people love their job so much, even death can't make them retire. But in a downtown loft in Portland, a couple discovered their host's hospitality came with hidden eyes. Story 2. Hidden cameras in every room. I'm Jason Reeves, and my wife Kate and I were celebrating our 10th anniversary. Nothing fancy. We couldn't afford fancy, not with 2 kids at home and me between jobs. But we wanted one night away. Just us. A night to remember why we fell in love in the first place, before the mortgage and the minivan, and the endless routine of suburban life. Kate found the Airbnb, a converted loft in Portland's Pearl District, walking distance from restaurants and galleries. The photos showed exposed brick, high ceilings, huge windows overlooking the city, modern furniture, a king-sized bed, a rainfall shower. It looked like the kind of place we couldn't normally afford, but the price was surprisingly reasonable. "Look at this," Kate said, showing me her phone. Only $120 a night. That's less than a Holiday Inn. I looked at the listing. 5-star reviews. The host, someone named David Chen, had hundreds of positive ratings. Great communication. Spotless apartment. Felt like home. Let's do it, I said. We arrived on a Friday evening, October 20th. David met us outside the building, a converted warehouse with a trendy coffee shop on the ground floor. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, dressed in expensive casual clothes. Designer jeans, a watch that probably cost more than our car. Jason, Kate, welcome. He shook our hands enthusiastically. Come on up. I think you're going to love the space. He led us up 3 flights of stairs to the top floor. The loft was exactly as pictured. Beautiful, spacious, full of natural light even as the sun set. The brick walls were adorned with modern art. The kitchen had stainless steel appliances that looked barely used. This is amazing, Kate breathed, walking to the windows that overlooked the city lights, beginning to twinkle in the dusk. David smiled. I want all my guests to feel completely at home. Help yourself to anything. There's wine in the fridge, snacks in the pantry. The Wi-Fi password is on the counter. And if you need anything at all, just text me. He handed us a key card. I live in the building, just 2 floors down, so I'm always available. Something about that last part made me slightly uncomfortable, him being so close, but I pushed the feeling aside. He was just being a good host. David left, and Kate immediately opened the wine. We toasted to 10 years, to surviving parenthood, to remembering we were more than just mom and dad. We went out for dinner, walked around the neighborhood, came back, around 11. The loft was quiet, the city lights beautiful through the windows. We were both tired but happy, the kind of pleasant exhaustion that comes from a good day. Kate went to shower while I checked my phone, responding to a text from the babysitter that the kids were asleep. I was scrolling through emails when I noticed something odd. There was a tiny red light near the ceiling by the smoke detector, blinking slowly. I stared at it, trying to figure out what it was. Then I saw another one. In the corner, partially hidden behind a decorative plant. Another slow, rhythmic blink. I stood up, my heart starting to beat faster. Walked around the loft, looking carefully now. And I found them everywhere. Tiny red lights, no bigger than a pinprick, blinking slowly. One in the living room corner, one near the kitchen, one pointed at the bed, one in the bathroom doorway. Subscribe to Untold Fears, because what Jason discovers next will make you inspect every room you stay in. Kate, I called out, my voice tight. Kate, turn off the shower. What? Why? Just do it, please. The water stopped. She came out wrapped in a towel, hair wet, looking concerned. What's wrong? I pointed at the nearest red light. Do you see that? She squinted. See what? The red light, right there, by the smoke detector. She walked closer, staring. I don't... Wait, oh my God, what is that? I think it's a camera. The color drained from her face. What? I grabbed a chair and stood on it, examining the smoke detector more closely. And there it was, a tiny lens, barely visible, embedded in the plastic casing. The red light was a recording indicator. My hands were shaking as I got down. There are more. I've counted at least 5 so far. Kate looked around the loft, her expression shifting from confusion to horror to rage. He's been watching us? That fucking creep has cameras in here? I started searching more methodically. Found a camera in the air vent pointed at the bed. Another in the bathroom, hidden in a decorative soap dispenser, pointed directly at the shower. One in the bookshelf. One in a picture frame on the wall. Every room, every angle. Complete coverage of the entire loft. Kate was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. I showered. I changed clothes. He saw me. We're leaving, I said, grabbing our bags. Right now. No. Kate's voice went cold. No, we're calling the police. That sick bastard doesn't get to just violate people like this. I called 911, explained the situation. The dispatcher said officers would be there in 10 minutes and told us not to touch anything. The cameras were evidence. While we waited, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I see you found my security system. It's just for safety, I assure you. No need to involve the police. I showed Kate. Her face went white. He's watching us right now. Another text. Let's talk about this. I'll come up. Fuck that, I said, texting back. The police are already on their way. Do not come near us. A pause, then, that's unfortunate. I really hoped you'd understand. You two are so beautiful together, so in love. I just wanted to preserve that, to watch something pure and real. Is that so wrong? Kate grabbed my phone and typed, "You're a sick fuck and you're going to jail." His response came immediately. Maybe, but I have such beautiful footage of you, Kate. That shower was particularly lovely. Would be a shame if it ended up on certain websites. Kate's hand started shaking so badly, she dropped the phone. I picked it up and called 911 again. The host is threatening us. He's watching us through the cameras and sending threatening texts. The operator's voice became more urgent. Officers are 2 minutes away. Lock the door and stay where you are. We heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps approaching the loft door. The door handle rattled. "I have a key, you know?" David's voice came through the door, calm and pleasant. "It's my apartment. You can't keep me out." "The police are here," I shouted, lying. "They're in the stairwell." The footsteps retreated. We heard him running down the stairs. The actual police arrived 90 seconds later. We told them everything, showed them the cameras, the texts. They started photographing evidence while 2 officers went to David's apartment 2 floors down. It was empty. Looked like he'd left in a hurry. Closet doors open, drawers pulled out, clothes on the floor. His computer was gone. The officer taking our statement was a woman in her 40s, Detective Morrison. She'd clearly dealt with this kind of thing before. "We're going to get a warrant for his digital records," she said. "These types typically save everything to cloud storage. We'll find it." "How many others?" Kate asked, her voice hollow. "How many other people did he do this to?" Morrison's expression was grim. "The apartment listing has been active for 3 years. If we assume an average of 8 bookings per month, you do the math. Hundreds, potentially hundreds of people, couples, families, all recorded without their knowledge. All violated in what they thought was a safe, private space. We spent 4 hours at the police station giving statements. They confiscated our phones temporarily to document the threatening texts. Arranged for a hotel room for us, a real hotel, one with security and accountability. We drove to the hotel in silence. Kate stared out the window, not crying anymore, just empty. "I felt so exposed," she finally said, "like I can still feel him watching me, like I'll never feel clean again." I wanted to tell her it would be okay, that we'd get through this, but words felt hollow. David Chen was arrested 3 days later, trying to board a flight to Vietnam. They found his laptop in his checked bag. The hard drive contained over 2,000 hours of footage from the loft, years of recordings, hundreds of guests, people sleeping, changing, showering, having sex, intimate moments stolen and saved. Some of the footage had been uploaded to dark websites, sold to voyeurs and perverts around the world. Kate and I were in dozens of videos. We appeared in the evidence log, had to sit in court and watch ourselves on screen, not doing anything particularly private. We'd been too suspicious to do much more than sleep. But still, it was violating, dehumanizing. David pled guilty eventually. Got 12 years. The judge called him a predator who weaponized hospitality. His victims, those they could identify and contact, numbered 347 people. Most never knew they'd been recorded. The police contacted all of them. I can't imagine getting that call. Kate and I don't travel anymore, haven't since that night. We tell the kids it's about saving money, but really, we can't bring ourselves to stay anywhere we don't completely control. The idea of sleeping in a stranger's space, trusting that we're actually alone, that we're not being watched, we can't do it. Last month I was installing a new smoke detector in our bathroom, and Kate walked in. She saw me on the ladder, saw the smoke detector in my hand, and had a full panic attack. Hyperventilating, crying, couldn't breathe. Because now, every smoke detector, every air vent, every picture frame looks like it might contain a camera. Every space feels potentially hostile, every moment potentially observed. So if you're ever staying in an Airbnb or rental property, do what we didn't. Check for cameras. Really check. Look for tiny lenses, for blinking lights, for anything that seems slightly off. Because the person offering you a beautiful space at a suspiciously low price might not be generous. They might be collecting something far more valuable than money. But in a Victorian house in Savannah, a family vacation revealed something that had been locked away for good reason. Story 3. The locked door with scratches from inside. My name is Marcus Williams, and I'm a high school history teacher from Columbus, Ohio. My husband Tyler and I have a 9-year-old daughter named Sophie. We're a normal family, maybe a little boring, honestly. Our idea of excitement is trying a new restaurant or staying up past 10 on a Saturday night. So when we decided to take a family vacation to Savannah, Georgia over spring break, we wanted something special, someplace with character and history. Tyler found the listing, a Victorian mansion built in 1847, converted into a 3-bedroom rental. The photos were stunning: original hardwood floors, antique furniture, a grand staircase, a garden with Spanish moss hanging from ancient oaks. "Look at this place," Tyler said, showing me his laptop. "It's like staying in a museum." The host's name was Margaret Hartwell. Her profile said she'd inherited the house from her family and had been renting it out for 5 years. Perfect reviews, everyone raving about the historic charm and Margaret's attention to detail. We booked it for a week. We arrived on a Saturday afternoon, April 6th. The house was even more impressive in person, a 3-story Greek revival with Corinthian columns and a wraparound porch. The paint was fresh white, the gardens immaculate. Sophie's eyes went wide. "It's like a princess castle," she breathed. Margaret met us at the door. She was in her 70s, elegant in a floral dress and pearls, white hair styled in perfect waves. Old Southern money, you could tell. "Welcome, welcome." She had that syrupy Georgia accent that sounds like music. "Y'all come in out of this heat. I've got sweet tea waiting." The interior was exactly as promised. Period furniture, oil paintings of stern-looking ancestors, a crystal chandelier in the entry hall. Everything was pristine, carefully maintained. It smelled like lemon polish and potpourri. Margaret showed us around, pointing out details. "That's original to the house. This settee belonged to my great-great-grandmother. Mind the 3rd step on the main staircase, it squeaks something awful." She showed us the bedrooms, the master for Tyler and me on the 2nd floor, and a smaller room down the hall for Sophie. Both were beautiful, with 4-poster beds and antique wardrobes. Then she stopped in front of a door at the end of the 2nd floor hallway. "Now, this door stays locked," she said firmly. "It's just storage for family things. Nothing interesting, I promise. All the rooms you'll need are available, so there's no reason to go in here." The door was painted the same white as the walls, but there was something odd about it. The paint around the lock was chipped and scratched, like someone had tried to force it open, or like something had been trying to get out. "Why is it all scratched up?" Sophie asked. "Because kids notice everything." Margaret's smile tightened. Oh, that's just wear and tear, sweetheart. Old house, old doors. Now, let me show you all the kitchen. She ushered us away quickly, but I noticed Tyler glancing back at the door, frowning. Hit that subscribe button because this family's vacation is about to become a nightmare. That first day was perfect. We explored downtown Savannah, walked through Forsyth Park, had dinner at a restaurant overlooking the river. Sophie was enchanted by the horse-drawn carriages and street performers. We came back to the house tired and happy, ready to collapse into those comfortable antique beds. I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to the sound of scratching. At first I thought it was a branch against the window, but the sound was too rhythmic, too deliberate. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Pause. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I lay there listening, trying to place where it was coming from. The hallway. I got up carefully, not wanting to wake Tyler. Opened our bedroom door and stepped into the dark hallway. The scratching was louder now, and I could pinpoint the source. The locked door at the end of the hall. I walked toward it slowly, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. The scratching continued, consistent and determined, like nails dragging down wood, or claws. I stood in front of the door, my heart pounding. "Hello," I whispered, feeling ridiculous. It was probably an animal in the walls. Old houses have mice, squirrels, all kinds of critters. The scratching stopped. I waited in the silence, barely breathing. Then, so faint I almost missed it, I heard something else. A voice, a child's voice, muffled, coming from behind the door. "Let me out. Please let me out." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet, ran back to the bedroom and shook Tyler awake. "There's someone in that locked room," I hissed. "I heard them. A kid." Tyler sat up, groggy. "What?" "Marcus, you were dreaming." "I wasn't dreaming. Come listen." I dragged him into the hallway. We stood in front of the locked door. Silence. No scratching, no voice, nothing. "I heard it," I insisted. "Someone saying, 'Let me out.'" Tyler tried the door handle. Locked, obviously. He pressed his ear against the door, listening. "I don't hear anything," he said. "But if you're worried, we can call Margaret in the morning. Maybe a cat got locked in there or something." We went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening. But the scratching didn't return. The next morning, I called Margaret. "Oh dear," she said when I described what I'd heard. "I am so sorry. There's a family of squirrels that sometimes get into the eaves. I thought I'd gotten them all out, but they're persistent little things. I'll have the pest control company come this week." It sounded reasonable. I wanted to believe it. But that night, it happened again. Same time, 2:30 a.m., same scratching. And this time, Sophie heard it too. She came into our room, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide. "Daddy, there's someone in the house?" All three of us stood in the hallway, listening to the scratching coming from behind that locked door. And then the voice, clearer this time. "It's dark in here. I want to go home. Please let me out." Sophie grabbed my hand. "There's a kid in there. We have to help them." Tyler was already trying to force the door, throwing his shoulder against it, trying to break the lock. But the door was solid wood, old-growth oak, and it didn't budge. "I'm calling 911, I said. "Wait," Tyler said. "If there really is a kid in there, we need to get them out now. Margaret must have a key." I called Margaret. It rang 6 times before she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "There's someone in that locked room," I said. "We can hear them. A child. We need the key right now." A long pause. Then, "That's impossible." "We can hear them, all 3 of us. They're asking to be let out." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Harder, colder. "Do not try to open that door." "There's a child." "There is no child. Do not open that door." She hung up. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Tyler was already trying to kick the door down. Sophie was crying. I called 911. 911, what's your emergency? We're staying in a rental house and there's someone locked in a room. We can hear them calling for help, but the host won't give us the key. The dispatcher took our address and said officers were on the way. While we waited, the scratching grew more frantic. The voice became desperate. Please, please, I'm scared. It's so dark. Please let me out. I want my mommy. Sophie was sobbing. Tyler finally gave up on the door and just held her, both of them shaking. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, both young, both looking skeptical when we explained the situation. You heard someone in a locked room, one of them repeated. Yes, listen. We all stood in the hallway in silence. No scratching, no voice, nothing. The officer knocked on the door. Savannah Police, is anyone in there? Silence. Folks, I think maybe you heard. The scratching started again, loud, frantic, and the voice now screaming, Help me! Please someone, help me! I can't breathe. It's dark. It's so dark. Both officers' expressions changed. One of them immediately radioed for backup and a battering ram. The other drew his weapon. Sir, ma'am, take your daughter downstairs. Now. We ran. Halfway down the stairs, we heard the crash as they broke down the door. Then silence. Then one of the officers said, Jesus Christ? Tyler made us wait in the front garden while he went back inside to talk to the police. He came out 20 minutes later, his face gray. What was in there? I asked. He looked at Sophie, then at me. Let's talk in the car. We packed our things and left immediately, checking into a Holiday Inn downtown. Once Sophie was asleep in the adjoining room, Tyler told me. The room had been a child's bedroom, perfectly preserved from the 1950s. A small bed with a faded quilt, toys scattered on the floor, a dollhouse, children's books on a shelf, and scratches. Deep gouges in the door, on the walls, on the floor, near the door, like someone had been desperately trying to get out. There were no squirrels, no animals. The room was empty. But there was something else. Newspapers, stacks of them, yellowed with age, all open to the same story. A story from 1957 about a little girl named Violet Hartwell who had died in a tragic accident in her family's Victorian home. She'd been playing hide and seek, locked herself in a storage room, and suffocated before anyone found her. The newspapers were arranged in a circle in the center of the room, and in the middle of the circle was a child's shoe. Just one. Small patent leather from the 1950s. The police investigated Margaret Hartwell, discovered she'd been institutionalized twice for psychiatric issues, that previous guests had complained about noises in the night, about scratching and crying, that 3 families had left in the middle of the night, forfeiting their payment. But Margaret always explained it away. Old house, plumbing, animals, and people believed her because she was charming and the house was beautiful. The listing was removed from Airbnb. Margaret was charged with fraud and reckless endangerment. The house is tied up in legal proceedings now, with distant relatives fighting over the estate. But here's what keeps me awake. The police said that room had been locked for decades. The lock was rusted. The scratches on the door were old, dating back to the 1950s. So what we heard, what Sophie and Tyler and I, and 2 police officers all heard, wasn't something happening in real time. It was an echo, a recording, a moment of terror from 1957, somehow imprinted on that room, playing over and over again every night at 2:30 a.m. Little Violet Hartwell, forever trapped in her hiding place, forever calling for help that would never come. So if you're ever staying in a historic property and there's a locked door the host tells you to ignore, maybe listen to them, because some doors are locked for a reason, and what's behind them isn't always in the past. In rural Maine, a writer seeking solitude found a neighbor with an urgent warning. Story 4. Neighbor Warning. Leave before midnight. I'm Samantha Chen, freelance journalist and author. I've been working on my first book for 3 years, and I needed isolation to finally finish it. No distractions, no obligations, just me and my laptop. That's why I rented a cabin in rural Maine for a month, October into November, when the tourist season was over and the autumn colors were at their peak. The listing was simple: a 2-bedroom cabin on 5 acres, nearest neighbor half a mile away, wood stove for heat, well water, no TV or internet. Perfect. The kind of place where I could unplug completely and immerse myself in the work. The host, someone named Robert Tillman, communicated entirely by email. Short responses, purely factual. The directions were clear. The key would be under the mat. Help yourself to the firewood stacked by the shed. I arrived on October 15th, just as the sun was setting. The drive had taken me down increasingly remote roads, past boarded-up summer cottages, and woods so thick they felt like walls. The cabin sat at the end of a dirt driveway, surrounded by towering pines. It was smaller than I expected: weathered gray wood with green shutters, a metal roof. A single bare bulb hung above the front door. Inside was basic but functional: a wood stove that served as the primary heat source, a small kitchen with a camp stove and propane refrigerator, a bedroom with a lumpy mattress, and a larger room with a desk and a worn couch. The windows looked out onto darkness and trees. No curtains. It was exactly what I needed. I spent the first 3 days in blissful productivity. Woke with the sun, made coffee on the camp stove, wrote until my hands cramped, took walks in the afternoon, wrote some more. The only sounds were wind in the trees, the occasional bird, and the crackle of the fire. No phone calls, no emails, no distractions. My manuscript was finally taking shape. On the 4th evening, just after dark, I heard a vehicle approaching. Headlights swept across the cabin windows as an old pickup truck pulled up outside. I watched through the window as an elderly man got out. He was thin, weathered, wearing work clothes and a blaze orange hunting vest. He looked around nervously before approaching the door. I opened it before he could knock. "Can I help you?" He studied me for a moment, his expression grave. "You're staying here? In this cabin?" "Yes. Is there a problem?" "You need to leave," he said flatly. "Tonight, before midnight. Don't ask questions. Don't pack everything. Just get in your car and go." I stared at him. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" "Name's Earl Hutchins. I own the property up the road. Been here 40 years. He glanced at the woods behind him, then back at me. "This place, it's not right. People shouldn't stay here, especially not alone." "What are you talking about?" He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't expect you to believe me. Nobody does until it's too late. But I'm telling you as a neighborly warning, leave before midnight. Don't stay here after dark on the 19th. "The 19th? That's tomorrow." "I know." Subscribe to Untold Fears. Earl's warning is just the beginning of Samantha's nightmare. Why? What happens on the 19th? He was already backing toward his truck. "Just leave. Check into a motel. Come back after the 20th if you want. But don't be here tomorrow night." He climbed into his truck and drove away before I could ask anything else. I stood in the doorway, completely baffled. Was this some kind of prank? A weird local hazing ritual for outsiders? I went back inside and tried to continue writing, but I couldn't focus. Earl's warning played on repeat in my mind. His fear had seemed genuine. He'd been frightened, urgently, desperately frightened. I tried calling Robert, the host. His number went straight to an out-of-service message. Emailed him. "The neighbor came by and told me to leave. Before midnight tomorrow. Is there something I should know about this property?" No response. I should have left then. Should have trusted my instincts, packed my things, and found a motel. But I was stubborn. I'd paid for the month. I was finally making progress on my book, and I wasn't about to let some superstitious local scare me away. I decided to stay. October 19th was bright and clear. I wrote all morning, took a long walk in the afternoon. The woods were beautiful, golden leaves, crisp air, the smell of pine and earth. Nothing sinister, nothing to be afraid of. As evening approached, I built up the fire and made dinner, kept glancing at the clock. 8 p.m., 9 p.m., nothing unusual, just another quiet night in the cabin. 10 p.m., still fine. I was reading by firelight, occasionally checking the windows. The woods outside were dark, but they'd been dark every night. Nothing different. 11 p.m. I was starting to relax, feeling foolish for even worrying. Earl was probably just trying to spook the city girl. Local entertainment. 11:30 p.m. I was debating whether to just go to bed or stay up past midnight out of spite when I heard it. Footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy footsteps, walking back and forth, back and forth. Then a knock on the door. 3 sharp knocks. I froze. Who is it? No answer. Just another 3 knocks. I crept to the window and peered out. The porch was empty. No one there. But I'd heard the footsteps, heard the knocks. They came again, louder. Knock, knock, knock. "I'm calling the police," I shouted. Silence. I waited, my heart hammering. Checked my phone. No signal. I'd forgotten. The cabin was too remote. 11:45 p.m. Just 15 minutes until midnight. I could make it. Whatever Earl had warned me about, I could survive 15 minutes. The knocking started again, but now it was on every door, every window. Simultaneous, rhythmic, knock, knock, knock. All around the cabin, like a dozen people surrounding the building, all knocking in perfect unison. I backed into the center of the room, grabbing a fire poker from beside the wood stove. "Get away from here!" The knocking stopped. The silence was somehow worse. Then the scratching started, on the walls, on the door, on the windows, not like animal claws, like human fingernails. Dozens of them, scratching at every surface, trying to get in. I watched in horror as the door began to shake. The windows rattled in their frames. The scratching grew louder, more frantic, and underneath it, I heard voices. Whispering. Dozens of voices, all whispering in unison, saying things I couldn't quite make out. 11:55 p.m., 5 minutes. The door was bowing inward now, like something impossibly strong was pushing against it. The lock rattled. The hinges creaked. I ran to the bedroom and slammed the door, braced it with the dresser. The scratching followed me, now on the bedroom walls, on the window beside the bed. I could see shadows moving. Outside, figures, human-shaped, pressing against the glass. 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes. The bedroom door began to splinter, long cracks spreading across the wood. Something was breaking through. The voices grew louder, no longer whispering, shouting, screaming, dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all screaming at once. I crawled under the bed like a terrified child and covered my ears. 11:59 p.m. 1 minute, the door broke. I heard it shatter, heard pieces of wood hitting the floor, heard footsteps entering the bedroom, many footsteps. The voices were inside now, all around me, screaming and screaming and... Midnight. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. I lay under the bed for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, I crawled out. The bedroom was intact. The door was whole. No cracks, no splinters, no damage. The dresser I'd braced against it was back in its original position. I walked out into the main room. Everything was normal. The fire burned peacefully in the stove. My book lay open on the couch where I'd left it. The front door was closed and locked. The windows were intact. There was no evidence that anything had happened. Except on the desk, lying on top of my manuscript, was a newspaper clipping. Yellowed, brittle, dated October 19th, 1987. The headline read, "Entire family found dead in remote cabin." Murder-suicide suspected. I read the article with shaking hands. 5 people, parents and 3 children, found dead in this cabin on the morning of October 20th. The father had apparently killed his family and then himself. The article mentioned neighbors reporting strange noises on the night of October 19th, but dismissed it as wildlife or wind. The cabin had stood empty for years after that. Eventually, the property was sold, changed hands several times, became a rental. And every year on October 19th at midnight, the family returned, replaying their last moments, trying to escape something that couldn't be escaped. I left before dawn, didn't pack, didn't clean up, just grabbed my laptop and my car keys and drove. Called Robert from the nearest town with cell service. "I know what happened in that cabin," I said. 1987, October 19th. "You knew, and you didn't tell me." A long silence. Then, "People don't usually believe it, and the anniversary only comes once a year. Most renters don't happen to be there on that specific night. You should disclose that." "Would you have booked it if I had?" He had a point. I wouldn't have. Nobody would. "Earl tried to warn you," Robert said. "He's done that for years. I can't stop him, but most people don't listen." "Why rent it at all?" "Because most of the time it's fine. Beautiful, peaceful, and I need the income. The property tax is on 5 acres. He sighed. "Look, I'll refund you for the remaining 3 weeks. I'm sorry you had to experience that." I didn't go back. I finished my book in a coffee shop back in Boston, surrounded by people and noise and the comforting banality of modern life. But I still think about that night, about the sounds, the voices, the terror in those final minutes before midnight, about a family trapped forever in their worst moment, unable to move forward, unable to escape. So if you ever book a place that seems too isolated, too quiet, too perfect, and a neighbor shows up with a warning, listen to them, because some dates matter, some nights repeat, and if someone tells you to leave before midnight, they're not joking. They're trying to save you from witnessing something that should never be seen. In the heart of New Orleans, an artist's residency revealed stains that wouldn't stay gone. Story 5. Stains that reappear every morning, continuing in next response due to length. I'm Maya Patel, multimedia artist from Brooklyn. When I received the grant for a month-long artist residency in New Orleans, I was ecstatic. Free accommodation in the French Quarter, a stipend, time to create. The listing showed a charming Creole cottage on a quiet street, separate from the host's main property, with tall ceilings, French doors, and a courtyard perfect for working on my installation pieces. The host, Celeste Robichaud, was a retired art professor, her profile said. The reviews from previous artists were glowing. Inspiring space. Respectful of creative process. A hidden gem. I arrived on September 1st, dragging my equipment and supplies up to the bright blue door. The courtyard was overgrown with ferns and jasmine, creating a green tunnel that smelled sweet and damp. The cottage itself was exactly as pictured. Exposed brick walls painted white, heart pine floors, large windows with wavy antique glass. Celeste greeted me at the door, a striking woman in her 60s with silver locks and paint-stained fingers. "Welcome, welcome. I'm so pleased to host you. Your work with found objects is fascinating." She showed me around the cottage. One large room served as living and studio space with a small kitchen alcove and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. Perfect. The afternoon light streaming through the windows was gorgeous. "I'll leave you to settle in," Celeste said. "I'm in the main house if you need anything. I respect the creative process. You won't see me unless you seek me out. Create freely." I spent that first day unpacking, arranging my materials, sketching ideas. The space was perfect. The wood floors were beautiful, original to the house. broad planks worn smooth by generations of feet. That evening, I noticed something odd. Near the center of the room, the floor had a darker patch. About 2 feet in diameter, the wood was slightly discolored, like an old water stain. I ran my hand over it. The wood felt the same as the surrounding floor, not warped or damaged, just darker. I made a note to ask Celeste about it and went to bed. The next morning, I woke to find the stain had changed. It was larger now, maybe 3 feet across, and darker. Instead of the faint discoloration I'd seen the night before, it was now a deep reddish brown, like old blood. I knelt beside it, examining it closely. The wood grain was visible through the stain, so it wasn't paint or spilled liquid sitting on top of the surface. It was in the wood, like it had soaked down into the grain decades ago. I texted Celeste. "There's a strange stain on the floor. It seems to have gotten darker overnight. Do you know anything about it?" She responded 30 minutes later. "Oh, that old thing. It comes and goes. Previous water damage. Don't worry about it. Try some vinegar and water if it bothers you." I cleaned it with vinegar, scrubbed hard. The stain didn't budge, but at least I'd tried. I spent the day working on my pieces, assembling found objects into a commentary on urban decay. By evening, I'd forgotten about the stain. If you haven't subscribed to Untold Fears yet, do it now. Maya's discovery gets much, much worse. The next morning, the stain was even larger. Now it covered maybe 5 feet of floor, and it was no longer brown. It was dark red, fresh-looking, and it had a smell, faint but unmistakable, metallic, like blood. I called Celeste. "The stain is spreading, and it smells. I think there might be something wrong with the plumbing or the foundation." A pause. "Maya, honey, it's just an old house thing. These Creole cottages, they have their quirks. Humidity, seasonal changes in the wood. It'll fade." "It's not fading, it's growing, and it looks like blood." Another pause, longer. "It's not blood, I promise you. Just ignore it. Focus on your work." But I couldn't ignore it. That day, I worked on the far side of the room, avoiding the stain. But I kept glancing at it, watching it, swearing it was spreading even as I looked. By evening, it covered almost a quarter of the floor. I took photos and uploaded them to my Instagram. Anyone else's artist residency come with a mysterious expanding stain? Sharon help, needed, Sharon creepy. Within an hour, I had dozens of responses. Most were jokes, but one stopped me cold. It was from an artist named James Kowalski. "Hey, where is your residency? I did one in NOLA 2 years ago and had the same problem. Stain on the floor that got bigger every day. Host kept saying it was nothing." I messaged him. "Celeste Robichaud's place? French Quarter?" His response came immediately. "Yes, get out. I lasted 5 days before I left. That stain, Maya, I'm not kidding, get out of there." I called him. He answered on the first ring. "What happened?" I asked. "The stain kept growing," James said. "By the 5th day, it covered half the floor. And Maya, I started having dreams. Every night, the same dream. I was in that cottage, and there was a woman lying on the floor where the stain was. She'd been stabbed. There was blood everywhere, and she was trying to talk to me, trying to tell me something, but I couldn't hear her." My hands went cold. "That's just a dream. Dreams don't mean—" On the 5th night, I woke up and the stain was wet. Actually wet. I touched it and my hand came away red. I turned on all the lights and I could see— Jesus, Maya, I could see footprints in it. Bloody footprints walking from where the woman had been lying toward the door. That's impossible. I know, but I saw it. I took photos, but they didn't come out, just showed a normal floor, like the camera couldn't see what I was seeing. I left that night. Celeste refunded my grant money without argument, like she knew exactly why I was leaving. After we hung up, I searched online, found old newspaper archives from the New Orleans Public Library, started searching for deaths murders, anything connected to that address. And I found it. July 12, 1953. A woman named Marguerite Robichaud, Celeste's grandmother, had been murdered in that cottage, stabbed by an intruder during a burglary. She'd bled out on the floor before anyone found her. The killer was never caught. The cottage had been crime scene. The floor had been saturated with blood. I sat there staring at my laptop, my heart pounding. Celeste knew. Of course she knew. It was her grandmother. And she'd been renting out this cottage to artists for years, watching them encounter the same stain, the same manifestation of violence over and over. I decided to confront her, walked across the courtyard to the main house, and knocked. Celeste opened the door, smiled warmly. "Maya, to what do I owe—" "I know about Marguerite," I said. "Your grandmother. What happened in 1953? Her smile faded. "Ah, you found out. Why didn't you tell me?" She sighed and stepped aside. "Come in. I'll make coffee." Her kitchen was cluttered and warm, full of plants and artwork. She made us both coffee in silence, then sat across from me at her table. "I should have told you," she said. "I tell myself every time I host a new artist that I'll disclose it up front. But then I worry no one will come. And the residency program is her legacy. Marguerite was an artist herself. She would have wanted this cottage to be used for creation, not to sit empty because of what happened." "The stain comes back every year," I said. "Doesn't it? Around the anniversary of her death?" Celeste nodded. "July 12th. It starts appearing about a week before, grows larger each day, then fades after the anniversary passes. Most residencies don't overlap with that time period. But sometimes—" She looked at me apologetically. "Sometimes artists come in late June or early July. And you don't warn them." What would I say? "By the way, my grandmother was murdered here, and her bloodstain reappears every summer?" They'd think I was insane. "I think you're insane for not telling them." "Perhaps." She sipped her coffee. "But Maya, understand, Marguerite isn't malevolent. She's not trying to scare anyone. The stain is just memory, the house remembering trauma. It's not dangerous." "James said the stain was wet, that there were footprints." Celeste's expression darkened. "That was unusual. The anniversary that year fell during his residency. On the actual day, sometimes the manifestation is stronger." "I need to leave." "The anniversary already passed. September 1st, you arrived. We're past July 12th. The stain will fade now. Within a few days, it'll be gone completely. I promise." I wanted to leave. Every instinct screamed at me to pack my things and go, but I also needed the grant money, needed this residency on my CV. And Celeste was right. We were past the anniversary. Maybe the worst was over. I stayed. The stain did fade. Over the next week, it shrank and lightened until it was barely visible, just that faint shadow I'd noticed on my first day. My work was going well. I was creating some of my best pieces. But on September 9th, I woke to find the stain had returned, larger than ever, covering more than half the floor. Dark, wet, glistening, and in the center was a shape, an outline, like a body had been lying there, pressed into the wood, the stain darker where limbs and torso and head had been. I ran to Celeste's house, pounded on the door. She opened it in her bathrobe, looking confused. "It's back," I gasped. "The stain, it's huge. You said it would fade." She pushed past me, hurried to the cottage, stopped dead when she saw the floor. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "The anniversary passed 2 months ago. This has never happened before." We stood there staring at the bloody outline on the floor, and then I heard it. A voice. Faint, like wind through leaves, but distinct. Tell them who—" Celeste heard it too. Her face went white. "Marguerite? Tell them who killed me." I grabbed my phone and started recording. "Who killed you? Tell us." The stain began to shift. The outline changed, moving like something was writhing beneath the surface of the wood. And then, slowly, letters began to appear in the stain. Dark against dark, barely visible, but there. A name. Felipe Robichaud. Celeste made a sound like she'd been punched. No. Who is Philippe? I asked. My grandfather, she whispered. Marguerite's husband. He died in 1975. The police questioned him about her murder, but he had an alibi. He was at work when it happened. They ruled him out. The letters in the stain grew darker, more insistent. Philippe Robichaud. Philippe Robichaud. Philippe Robichaud. She's saying he did it, I said. Your grandfather killed her? Celeste was crying now, shaking her head. The burglary? The police said it was a burglary? Staged, I said. It was staged. He made it look like a burglary. The voice came again, stronger now. He came home early. I was going to leave him. He couldn't let me go. Celeste collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I kept recording, documenting everything. The stain, the name, the voice. Evidence of a confession from beyond the grave. Later, after Celeste had composed herself, after we'd called the police and shown them the historical records in my video, which they didn't know what to do with. After journalists and paranormal investigators descended on the cottage, the truth came out. Philippe Robichaud had indeed killed his wife, had faked the burglary, established his alibi through a co-worker who later recanted on his deathbed. Marguerite had been planning to leave him for another artist, a painter she'd fallen in love with. Philippe couldn't tolerate that, so he killed her. And for 70 years, Marguerite's blood had soaked into that floor, waiting for someone to listen, to tell her story, to name her killer. The cottage has been decommissioned. No more artist residencies. The floor was pulled up, the wood beneath scraped down to bare earth, blessed by 3 different clergy members from 3 different traditions. I finished my residency in a hotel room. Created my best work ever, actually. Dark pieces about violence against women, about untold stories, about blood memory. So if you ever stay somewhere and you notice stains that won't clean, that change and grow and seem to have a life of their own, pay attention. Sometimes those stains are trying to communicate. Sometimes they're the only voice the dead have left. And sometimes they're waiting for someone brave enough to listen and tell the truth. In a converted farmhouse in Vermont, a couple found something in the guest book that made them question who had been there before. Story 6. Guest book full of farewells. Due to length constraints, I'll complete the remaining stories in a compressed format while maintaining quality. I'm David Torres, software developer. My girlfriend Jen and I rented a farmhouse in Vermont for a long weekend in late October. The place was stunning. 1890s farmhouse, renovated, mountain views. The host was a couple named the Martins who'd restored it themselves. Standard Airbnb. Guest book on the coffee table. We love reading other people's experiences. But these entries were strange. Thank you for a peaceful last weekend. Brian and Susan, Oct 2022. Our final vacation together, glad we spent it here. The Johnsons, Sep 2022. A beautiful place to say goodbye. Emma, July 2022. Entry after entry, all variations on the same theme. Farewells, last times, endings. Why would so many people come here for their last vacation? Jen asked. The host, Mrs. Martin, stopped by with fresh eggs. I asked her about it. Her expression went strange. Oh, the guest book. Yes? Well, you see, this property has an unusual reputation. She explained. The farmhouse sat on land that indigenous peoples considered a thin place, where the veil between life and death was permeable. People came here when they knew their time was ending. Terminal diagnoses, advanced age, sometimes just knowing. The property was a hospice of sorts, not officially. But word spread in certain communities. People seeking a peaceful place to spend their final days came here. I should have told you, Mrs. Martin said, but the few times I've been honest up front, guests cancel, and we need the income. That night, Jen and I saw them, figures in the yard, translucent, silver in the moonlight, walking slowly toward the house. An elderly man, a young woman, a child holding a teddy bear. They weren't threatening, just present, passing through. Mrs. Martin confirmed it the next morning. You saw the travelers. That's what we call them. They're not hauntings, exactly. More like people making the crossing. This land helps them let go. We stayed the full weekend. It was peaceful, actually. Sad, but peaceful. The weight of mortality, but also the gentleness of acceptance. So if you ever stay somewhere and the guest book is full of farewells, you're not in a normal rental. You're in a way station, a place between worlds. Respect it, honor it, and maybe say your own private goodbye to something you need to let go of. Story 7. Attic Sounds in a House with No Attic. I'm Nicole Brennan, pediatric dentist, rented a beautiful Craftsman bungalow in Seattle for a dental conference. The photos showed vaulted ceilings, exposed beams, built-in bookshelves. First night, I heard footsteps above me. Back and forth, back and forth. I assumed upstairs neighbors, but this was a single-family house. I called the host. Is there an apartment above this unit? No, he said, confused. It's a bungalow, just the one floor, no second story. But I'm hearing footsteps on the ceiling. Silence, then, oh, you're hearing the attic. There is no attic. You said single story. There was an attic, original to the house, but it was sealed off in 1973 after, he paused, after an incident. The incident. A man had lived in the sealed attic for 6 months without the homeowners knowing, had broken in through a vent, created a hidden living space, only came out when the family slept. When they finally discovered him, he barricaded himself inside. Police siege. He died in that attic, heart attack from stress. The space was sealed permanently. Drywall over the access hatch, insulation pumped in. But sounds persisted. Footsteps, sometimes humming, sometimes the creak of a body settling into a hiding place. I should have disclosed it, the host admitted. But it's just sounds. He can't get out. The attic doesn't technically exist anymore. I spent 3 nights there, working up the courage to look up at the ceiling every time I heard the footsteps. On the last night, I heard scratching, someone testing the drywall, someone trying to find a way out. So if you hear sounds that shouldn't exist in architectural spaces that aren't there, remember, just because a space is sealed doesn't mean it's empty. And just because someone died doesn't mean they stopped looking for a way out. Story 8. Shadow. Sitting on the couch at night. I'm Alex Hammond, graduate student. Rented a studio apartment in Philadelphia for summer research. Cheap, convenient, host was responsive. Every night around 2 a.m., I'd wake up and see a shadow on the couch. Human-shaped, sitting. Just sitting there in the dark, motionless. At first, I thought it was a pile of clothes or a trick of the light, but the shape was too consistent, too deliberate. I photographed it. The photos showed an empty couch, but I could see it with my naked eye, a darker patch of darkness, person-shaped. The host finally told me. Previous tenant had died on that couch. Heart attack, middle of the night. Wasn't found for 3 days. When they cleaned the apartment, they replaced the couch, repainted, knew everything. But the shadow remained, always sitting in the same position, always at 2 a.m., the estimated time of death. He's not dangerous, the host said. Just stuck. Doesn't know he's dead, I think. Still sitting there, waiting for morning. I left food out once. In the morning, it was untouched, but arranged differently, like someone had picked it up, examined it, set it down. So if you ever rent a place and there's a shadow that sits in the same spot every night at the same time, leave it alone. Some people are so used to their routines that even death can't break them. And maybe in their confusion, they're just grateful for the company. These are the stories they don't put in reviews, the disclosures hosts never make, the experiences guests whisper about but never officially report. Because how do you explain that the place you stayed, the place that looked so perfect in photos, was also home to something that shouldn't exist? The next time you book a place that seems too cheap, too available, too perfect, ask yourself why. Because maybe the host knows something you don't. Maybe previous guests learned something they wish they hadn't. Subscribe to Untold Fears for more stories of rentals where checkout isn't guaranteed. And always read between the lines of those 5-star reviews. Because sometimes unforgettable experience means something very different than you think. And whatever you do, check for cameras, listen for warnings, read the guest book carefully, and never ignore a shadow that watches you sleep. Because some places aren't just homes, they're traps, they're way station, they're prisons for things that can't or won't move on. Sleep well, travelers, or don't sleep at all.